Hi everybody, it's ProbablyRed. I'm here with you today for Tech the Deck on double feature Fire Dragon Throne and Fire Dragon Expedition. So let's jump right into it. I am going to do kind of a comparison. I'll do a rundown, and I'll when I get to the expedition portion, I'll note all like the things that I'll be like, well, I've already talked about these, but then I'll also add a couple notes on what was good in expedition, like what was exceptional expedition, or what kind of stood out, like what the, like a card, for example. Like, let me just give an example. Trying to think of a good example here. Like Thunder of Wings, it, for some reason or another, like it might function better in expedition than it does in throne, or vice versa. So I'll mention like standouts like that as I come across them and realize them in this scheme of in the scheme of the, you know what I mean, the deck tech, as the deck tech runs its course. I was trying to use an expression there, it just didn't work. But first, the curve. Curve looks kind of weird. It's not aggro, which is kind of strange for a fire deck, you might think. But it feels like aggro mid-range. Like some games, it's just like, all right, we got what we need. But most of the time, it's not super heavy on removal. It has some pretty nice removal. The throne version especially, it's got 3 key pieces. You got your Flame Blast, you got your Torches, and you got your Cinder Clutches. And the Cinder Clutches are like super, really good rate units. For 1, it's just crazy sometimes. Like if you get 2, like that's where you want it. If you can get it to deal 2 damage, 2 different dragons on the field, which is pretty possible in this deck. You can get it to get 2 Flame Figs, you're golden. Cast it. Don't try to get like 7 Flame Figs. I don't even think it's possible with 7. Real quick, let's count how many different dragons there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay, I promise I didn't set that up like that. It's just, but yeah, so don't wait till you get like 7. If you can get 2, perfect. Sometimes I'll use it for 1, like if I have to, because it's a 1 cost 3/1 with Reckless that also deals 1 damage. Perfectly acceptable card, but don't do that if you're just hitting face, unless you have nothing else better to do. Alright, so let's start over here. This is one of the key differences from Throne. The Throne version of this deck to the Expedition version. You can't run this in the Expedition version, because you definitely would. It is strong. Like, the only comparable card like to this with the Dragon cost reduction would be the Cinder Toda. It has nothing on this card. 1-drop 1/1 doesn't seem like great stats compared to a 0/4, but this reduces the cost of your dragons by 1 for 1. Like, you just plop it out. It's like Initiate, but for dragons. And it can actually give you more value if you get reduction on 2 dragons and then get them into play. That's like 2 Initiates. It's crazy. Cost reduction, though a little bit more limited in this case because it has to be a dragon card, can be better than maximum power. And then it also becomes a really nifty, a pretty darn like useful 3/2 with quick draw. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at. This card is incredible. I think it's a little bit pushed. It comes from a time where there wasn't as many dragons, so it was like, okay, can you get a dragon out? People were playing bait and stuff, and it was just crazy. I actually remember trying to brew with this card, and now that this card is just like something that gets slotted into a deck I was already building. But anyways, Covetous Stranger. Covetous Stranger has impressed me a lot. It has just a lot of weird synergy you wouldn't really think about with the deck. Namely, Tattoo Dragon. Yeah, Tattoo Dragon is just crazy with Covetous Stranger. And another thing is it doesn't have diminishing returns. If you get 2 Covetous Strangers, you're just drawing more. And what this kind of does is it pushes it out of the range of being just an aggro deck. It gets it into that mid-range feel, because you're getting, once you run out of cards, once you run out of firepower, you just say, okay, I'm going to start spending my treasure troves. Now, that's where the Cinder Toda does have a slight advantage over owning Dragonsmith, which we're not running. Just a hint. We're not running the Cinder Toda, which we might, if we do another iteration of this in the future, test it out. Or I might test it out just to see how it would have done. But we're just so full up on the higher cost cards, it just didn't feel right for the deck. We really want to be casting these big dragons and on up. But let's see, where were we going with that? We were on Covetous Stranger. Yeah. So it's not too much you can say here. I know Strangers have been getting a lot of heat lately from the nerfs and from the community because they have a certain play pattern that like there's a good portion of the people who play don't particularly enjoy. And I don't think it should go for all Strangers. Like I can understand, you know, some of the legendary Strangers with just insane stats that feel oppressive to play against, like, and just having to play against them again and again and again because they're the best thing out there. I can get that, but Covetous Stranger, while really strong, shouldn't just be sneezed at because he's a stranger, you know? Yeah. Okay, so on to Teething Whelp. I love this card. Since I'm pretty sure it came out with Flames Exalta. I have a bad memory for what cards came out when, but since Flames Exalta, this card has been so much fun to play with. I love the play pattern. Some people might not like the play pattern so much because of draft, but I love it. I think it's so much fun. Now, it is terrifying. Like, it is a little nightmare. Like, literally, it is a little nightmare dragon to fight against. But when you're on the operating side of this card and it's working for you, it is so much fun. Just like, okay, got it in there, got my boost, now I'm flying, and then hit 2 more times, boom, now I'm a giant dragon. It's so satisfying. Very fun card. And it's a 2-drop dragon, so it like just really synergizes with the deck, gives you a key early piece to synergize with. Burning Core Drake, that's the same kind of idea, but for a 3-drop. Now, in Throne, this card is pretty low powered compared to some of the stuff you can find. Like, he'll die to Avara's Favor out of nowhere, and you'll just be kind of like, ugh, that's not good. That's not a good thing. On the other hand, the Mastery 9, you can get it sometimes, and that's pretty good. It's like a little Nahid's Desolation. Not to mention did 9 damage to face, which means you should be in a pretty good spot. And then it's good at blocking, like, not Valkyrie Enforcers, because Valkyrie Enforcers just silence it, but, you know, it's good at blocking lower toughness, and lower health flyers. So, this is where this card does not stand out very much in Throne. It's kind of like one of the weaknesses of the deck, but it does work. I mean, it's a 3/1 flyer. Not terrible. It's just delicate. And it does some work, even though you're flying against Cloud Snakes and Humbugs sometimes in Expedition. This does end up doing a lot of work in that format, comparatively, in my opinion, and from my perspective. But it did better than it had any right to do in Throne. Alright, so Jack Mercenary Hunter. Now, this is a newer card, and been blown away by it. It's very popular. 3 costs. Pardon me for that. 3 cost. Fire, fire, fire. Okay, I don't even need to read the influence in this deck. It's all fire, unless it's like 3 fire, 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 fire. Then, like, okay, now I have to be running some. Wait till turn 5, or be running some Shavka Evangels, you know, something like that, or other ways of getting influence. Anyways, when Jack hits the enemy player, you get to draw a treasure trove. And yes, I have confirmed from personal experience, his second ability does include getting you a treasure trove. This is another reason why the Cindermont Totem might actually have some potential, because just getting 1 cost treasure troves, it would be insane, because it's like 1 cost, draw a card, just boom, boom, boom. But what old Jack does here is when you summon him, you get to pay 1, discard a card to deal 2 damage to 2 enemies. Can go face, which is a lot of times you want to go face and hit a unit to push a little bit, because it is an aggro mid-range. And then if you discarded a sigil, it gets double damage, so it's 4 to 2 enemies. Which when you're hitting face with that is worth the card. It's like a super, super strong piercing shot with a body left behind. and it can draw you cards later. This card has got it all. It doesn't. It might seem a little bit innocuous, but once you play it and feel how it plays, it makes you want to hold out. Like I was originally like really enthusiastic about the I think it's Decimate, the Emblem of Shavka. I think it's Emblem of Shavka. But I had to take them out because you just want to get Jack. I run 2 Seek Powers, and in the other deck I run 4K of, I think it's 3 or 4K of the Favors, just because it's good to get those in your hand. And it's worked. It feels kind of strange. That's just because like I want extra power. I don't know if Seek Power is just strictly worse than a Fire Sigil. It does like a very, very, very tiny amount of filtering. Oh, I know I'm running Seek Power over a Sigil because it triggers the Tattoo Dragon, which we're about to get to, and that's really fun. So it does that. Crimson Firemaw. Let's go on the next card. 4 cost for a 5/4 flyer is above rate, and in Throne you need it to be. This is kind of like some of the incentives of running dragons. It's not necessarily, we're not the synergy part. There's not too many cards that actually are, hey, this is a synergy card in this deck. Like I said, there's only really, I think 3. We got Draconic Ire in the market. We got the Dragonsmith. And then we got Cinder Clutch. And I'm pretty sure that's it. The rest, like, we're not running all dragons, but a lot of the deck has dragons for those 3 cards. So yeah, getting the cost reduction and just being able to play your next Crimson Firemaw or a Tattoo Dragon for 0 is amazing. And then just a 5/4 swinger, just attacker, 5/4 attacker in the air, just bam. It's amazing. And then go for a 4-drop 4/3 on Tattoo Dragon. Also strong stats, but one of the big things here is pledge. You want to pledge because that's another thing for Jack. Like, it's another opportunity for Jack to discard a sigil to double the amount of damage that he's outputting. And then other than that, like if you have like 4 already, and you can anticipate getting enough power to play your Tattoo Dragon, you're going to want to keep it. Because those 2/2 Oni Grunts, even in Throne, they do some work. They are strong cards. All around, this card has so much, like, it just makes the deck smooth. Gives you ground defenders, gives you a little push against more control builds if you can have it survive. It's delicate, but I mean, we're also running Burning Core Drakes. I mean, come on. It's a delicate deck. Delicate flyers, you know. And there's just a lot of cards that synergize with Tattoo Dragon. There's more cards that synergize with Tattoo Dragon's draw 2 cards in a turn ability than there are cards that synergize with dragons, I believe. We got the Covetous Stranger. To some extent, Burning Core Drake, because you're drawing. Because you're drawing your treasure troves, and the treasure troves are drawing your other cards. So that's like you got a couple of opportunities there. Let's see. Not drawing anything there. Seek Powers. Yeah, I guess there's not too many. I mean, there's a few. 1. 1.5, I guess. 2. Yeah, okay, so it happens. But I mean, if you could activate this twice, the card is overperformed, in my opinion. 4 costs for 2 2/2s that you had to cast spells for. Not the greatest, but when you add a 4/3 flyer, that's amazing. And the potential to get more. Eclipse Dragon. I was kind of skeptical at first about Eclipse Dragon, but it has overperformed in my eyes. even in Throne, which I know I've been saying that a lot, because Throne is a harder format to stand out in. But even in Throne, I feel like a flying charge quick draw 4/4 for 5 gets there. This deck, it doesn't come up too often. At least this iteration of the deck, it doesn't come up too often. Getting the 3 power for your fast spells, it just doesn't happen that much. But it doesn't. You don't need it to. This card can push for a good amount of damage. Then we got just a little bit, just in case you get some extra value off of warping for Pouncing Drake, especially with the Crimson Firemaw and the Oni Dragonsmith. It can happen. Only 2, and it's just to have a little bit of extra dragons, or a couple more extra dragons, especially for Cinder Clutch. Now, I wanted this Throne build because I know how like hardcore Throne can get. Like you could just get smashed out there. I wanted this build to be a little bit more rigid, and less like, okay, it can, like I don't want it to be as much as I didn't want it to be as much of a toolbox. Which you'll see some of the bigger differences when I go over the expedition next. And then Cinder Clutch, like I already told you about this card. This card is great, excellent addition. Flame Blast, I love Flame Blast. I think it's so good. The 3 fire influence, it doesn't really come up that often in this deck. It can be frustrating because you don't really look at it and think 3 fire influence when it's in your hand, and you just be like on turn 2 wanting to cast it because it's your only removal spell, and you'll just be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with it? I can't cast it. And you read it and you'll be like, oh, okay, no big deal. Unless they're like war crying or infiltrating or something, and then you're like, ah. But other than that, now it sounded like I was just rattling off bad things, but it's like a very, very tiny scenario. It doesn't help against aggro as much, but Torch does. Torch is perfectly fine for aggro. Cinder Clutch is pretty good, but it does take a little while to get it online. And then I already described the pure reason why Seek Power is in here, and Thunder of Wings is basically another unit, but a pretty unique unit. It can either cost 5 for a 4/2 flyer charger dragon, or it can cost you 3 and you exhaust the unit. This card is amazing. It doesn't get the cost reduction from Oni Dragonsmith, but Oni Dragonsmith can exhaust to give it a 2 reduce of cost, essentially. Covetous Stranger, this happens to a lot. If the field is covered, Teething Whelps will do it sometimes if they haven't gotten flying yet. A Burning Core Drake, this can save a Burning Core Drake's life if they have something with 4 toughness. So, yeah. That is kind of some like nice little tech, is the Thunder of Wings making the Burning Core Drake not have to attack even though it's reckless. So that's great. And the charge just comes out of nowhere. It's like a burn spell to the face. And Draconic Ire does the same thing. Like you just read it as, okay, kills attachment for 3 if I hit somebody with a dragon. No, that's not how it works. You also deal damage equal to its cost to the enemy player. And then 25 fire sigils, keeping it simple except for the couple Seek Powers and then the Pledge. Alright, so we're jumping right into it, folks. We're going back, clicking done. We're going into the expedition version of this deck just to give you a rundown of some of the similarities versus differences. Okay, so we're gonna run it kind of backwards this time, which is gonna be kind of strange. Draconic Ire, same thing. Thunder of Wings, one thing to note is it is a good bit stronger in Expedition, which, I mean, you could just take that like on a full deck level. Like if it's made it from the Throne version into the Expedition version, that's a great thing. That means that we're running cards that we would be willing to run in Throne in an Expedition deck. Okay, so Thunder of Wings, 4/2. It's awesome. It's awesome. Does the same things for, it comes up a good bit. Like if you are facing up against a Humbug, you're like, I really would just rather have a 4/2 if it's just like one of them, or a Cloud Snake, and you just need to push against a 1 power or 1 attack unit. So in air, so it just gives you a little tiny like potential to do something like that. Okay. Caleb's Favor, it deals 2 damage to face, and it does something similar with the Tattoo Dragon as the Seeks do in the Throne version. I didn't use Caleb's Favors in the Throne version because I was like, I really don't want a 2-drop. In Throne, it's just you don't have enough time. It feels like to me. So Cinder Clutch, also amazing in this deck, and you'll notice like, okay, so this is the same thing. Like if you can get 1 off of it, it's worth it, but you still kind of want to get 2. If you can get 3, it's overperformed. And in this, there's actually better opportunities for it to get there. Like it happens more often. That you'll get like 2 or 3 or 4, you know, like it can get pretty crazy with this deck because I do have a couple 1-offs. Okay, so Char. This is pretty weird. Blazing Salvo just didn't make it into the deck. I feel like since we are going to be facing off against aggro, and we are aggro mid-range, we don't want to be compromised by the 2 damage to our own faces with a new nerf to Blazing Salvo. And I like everything else about Blazing Salvo, except that it doesn't go face. So Char lets us go face, just get that last push of damage. So if we can't get in there in the air, or they've just killed our units, unit after unit, Char can get there. And I know you can kind of do the same thing with Blazing Salvo, swapping for a Seer, but I just didn't. I uncrafted them, and I didn't want to test them with this deck. I didn't want to take the phase damage. It did get nerfed, and I'm trying out Char to see if Char can you know make it up a little bit, like now that it's kind of a different balance. So we'll see how that works out, and it did, by the way. Char has been working excellent. It's just a 3-of in this deck. And then we have Sindok. You'd be surprised how many times I've gotten out this 9-drop. And the reason being is because it does get cost reduced by how much damage the enemy player has taken. And if you can swing in, deal a bunch of damage, and then your opponent's dealing with it, and it's not really that win more, just a little bit of win security. If you can drop down a Sindok, after you've just smashed face for a bunch of damage, you're in a great position. Especially if you've been playing like 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, and then got stuck on 3 and just been playing smaller units as much as you possibly can and trying to stay alive and deal damage. Then you just pull out a Sindok out of nowhere, you're just like, okay, got there, 7-4 flyer, if you can kill it, you better kill it now. It's awesome. And next we have Stone Smelt Dragon. So we have the Draconic Ire, but this just gives us a little bit more. Oh, did I skip Dragonforge? That's like, okay, that's the premise of all these things. So you notice how I have Sindok here, right? So Dragonforge. We'll talk about Dragonforge as soon as we're done with Stone Smelt Dragon. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, but that's okay. So Stone Smelt Dragon, I felt like, because we're a little bit limited with our choices in Expedition. Like we have a couple of like questions that we have to ask when deck building, and those questions do matter. About how efficient your deck is and all that kind of stuff. You have to try to optimize with what you're given. With Stone Smelt Dragon, I felt like it was just the best 7-cost dragon. I wanted to run up the line for Dragonforge, just have like, okay, what can I cast? I want to cast the biggest thing I can next turn, or what I think will be the biggest thing I can cast next turn. So, and then this also gives us a little bit more answers to relics, which comes up a little bit more in Expedition, I feel like. And if it does come up in... Pardon me. When it does come up in Throne, it can be like sometimes a bigger problem than the kind of stuff you'll be facing up against in Expedition. It's just nice to be able to get rid of 2 attachments, if any, or not attachments, 2 relics, which doesn't come up all the time. It's certain decks, certain archetypes that actually have it happen. It does get rid of the relic weapons, so that kind of makes it a little bit safer to just throw out a Stone Smelt Dragon. And then the paying 7, like just like it's fire breathing essentially, but you have to have 7, which you should have had at least 6 when you played this, so it's not too hard to get up there. And just having the opportunity to swing in for 13 can be amazing. And then let's bounce back to Dragonforge. I love that it's a fast spell. That really, really synergizes with good old Eclipse Dragon, where Eclipse Dragon shines a little bit more in the Expedition format, and having the Dragonforges included just adds that. Makes this kind of like a more toolboxy aggro mid-range deck. And the cost reduction does matter, because you can get stuff out that like you didn't even have in your hand out next turn, like a turn earlier than it should be out. So that kind of gives us that like push. Soulfire Drake has been the card I have cast most off of Dragon Forge, because it just seems like I'll end up at 5 and I'll be like, okay, I need to cast something. Let's reduce a Soulfire Drake and then charge with it next turn, swinging it for 5, and if they do have an answer for it, okay. The rest of the game, since this is kind of a mid-rangey aggro deck, does make it like very valuable to get all of your units with flying or all your units with charge, because if it already has flying, it'll give it charge, and vice versa. So if it has both, well then dang. But that the only thing that is the case with is Eclipse Dragon. Okay, and then other differences are this deck just ran better in Expedition. It was a blast to play. I loved Fire Dragon Expedition. This was the one that really just kicked it up a notch. Yeah. So if you liked the video, go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe if you like these Triple T series and you want to keep seeing it every week. Well, next time a video comes up, you'll see it. It'll be like, hey, ProbablyRed just released a brand new Triple T. So go ahead and do that, and I'll see you next time. Have a great night. Thank you very much.